And so, in some way, it requires a leap of faith, because it requires a leap of faith into that kernel of suffering, right? In order to gain awareness of it, right? I find it funny that the area that comes just before the end of the game, basically the last area, is accessed through a symbolic leap of faith, in my opinion. You enter Dragon Forest by crossing a waterfall. Crossing a waterfall is such a entry into fairyland kind of thing, because I think this archetype of the entry through a waterfall is meant to suggest a leap of faith, because ordinarily jumping towards a waterfall could end very badly, right? There might be a wall behind the waterfall. You can't see the door, so you have to trust that there is a door. And how do you trust that there's a door? By hearing the cry of help that comes from the other side. Diddy hears a cry for help from the other side. He hears an appeal from an area of the psyche that is unconscious and repressed to him. So it requires him trusting that there is something there, right? That voice, that is to say, the intrusion into consciousness of the repressed contents, suggests the existence of a domain where those contents come from, kind of thing. It's kind of like the discovery of the unconscious, the discovery of the existence of the unconscious by the individual. And it seems as if the game culminates, like the last area requires you to actually take a leap of faith in some way. And so it's funny also because, as I was saying in the last video, I think the whole game is a game. It's a fairground ride. It's basically tracks that are kind of ready, set, and you drive through them the same way you would in an amusement park. It's driving for fun, which is something that we usually associate to amusement parks. It's fun, decorative kind of amusement rides, right? But the game doesn't actually explicitly portray itself that way until Future Funland. In Future Funland, as I see it, the name Future Funland suggests that it's an amusement park of some kind. And the inclusion of amusement parks in Rareware games, in these kinds of anthropomorphized animal Rareware games, is so, again, it just comes up so often that I think it's an archetype within these games, right? It comes up in Banjo-Kazooie games, it comes up in the Donkey Kong Country games, it comes up here. There is something about the amusement park archetype that is archetypal within these games. These are not just random amusement parks. I think there is a pattern there is a pattern of meaning to them in some way. And I think that it relates to the games themselves, because they represent playing and fun, which is what the video game that you are playing at the moment is. It's the role that it is kind of fulfilling in some way. It's what it's doing. So again, it's as if throughout the game there is an aspect of what you're doing that is fairground-like, but an awareness of this doesn't actually arrive till you reach the homeland of the superegoic other, or the home of the superego. And again, it's as if to enter into a state of mind that takes that into account, right? That takes the game's nature as game, is to somehow transcend time within the game. It breaks the timeline in some way, because if in the in-game, if you're playing Diddy Kong Racing in your room in winter, but the game is set in summer, for example, then in the in-game timeline, it's a different time. It's summer. But if you then somehow, if the game breaks the fourth wall and presents itself to you as game, you're suddenly brought back into a different timeline, which is yours, in which it is winter. So there is a way in which maybe this bringing to awareness of the game as game is a leap of faith in some way as well, because it's a leap out of time into another time, into a transcendence of time, into the present moment. And so I think there is some way in which that's the strange thing, right? The Buddhist aspect of this, that the kernel of suffering in some way is in the present moment. And in order for Diddy to feel it, he needs to take a leap of faith into the present moment, which is a slight paradox. I think that's why time needs to be transcended, and why time is referenced so much. I find this Buddhist aspect of this very interesting, considering that Wizpig is a pig, but it's some sort of a mystical, demonic kind of pig of some kind, and that the pig in Buddhism, from what I can tell, represents sometimes the wheel of time itself, the wheel of birth and rebirth, and therefore of suffering in Buddhist terms. And in many kind of Buddhist mandalas, the pig is kind of the superegoic power that holds the mandala, the sphinx that is the guardian of the mandala. If you are to escape the mandala, you have to pass through that pig. You have to confront that pig in some way. So I find that very interesting, that it is associated to that. So also, it's weird to me that in the final celebration sequence, we get two fade outs. One is on Pipsy and one is on Taj, which again are, I think, the two characters that I perceive as being most kind of being used to represent the mystical in this game, and they are somehow singled out by the fade outs. Pipsy is seen riding some dinosaurs and seems very happy to be riding these dinosaurs. And she is associated to dinosaurs in several of the, well, at least one of the manual screenshots. And there is another kind of obscure way in which I think she may be associated to the dinosaurs, where it feels as if Pipsy has been thrown out from the mountain and her family has been kicked out. So her superegoic troubles are also family oriented, right? It's not just her who's been kicked out. It's her and her entire family have been kicked out from the mountain. And this, the fact that her happiness in the final sequence is shown to be her riding with these dinosaurs, it makes it seem as if these dinosaurs are meant to symbolize her family. They are symbolically her family. It's as if it symbolizes a reunion with family. And then the fade out on Taj is not on Taj as the character, but it is on Taj as golden statue, as if he also has been reunited with his original status as god of the island. And these two characters are somehow connected because Pipsy is the one who hears the message. So, okay, if Pipsy lived in the mountain and hears the message of the mountain, then Pipsy is more connected to the mountain. And the mountain, in the general map, the mountain is where the dinosaurs live in some way. Or at least, as I think I suggested in one of the earlier videos, I think that dinosaurs and dragons are being associated to volcanoes and fire and smoke. They're being associated to heat in some way. And so here I would want to suggest that Pipsy is associated to fire in some way. And as a counterpart to this, I think Tip Top, the turtle, would be associated to water, in that, well, first he is an animal who lives in the water, right? So yeah, I think Tip Top would maybe be associated to water. And it seems to me that in some of the promotional art, these two characters are set as being in some sort of a duality. They flank Diddy in the same way that Timber sometimes flanks Pipsy. There are several kind of like symmetries between the characters. And I would argue that one of them is between Tip Top and Pipsy. Or I would like to offer this interpretation that there is a way in which Pipsy is being associated to fire and therefore things that go up, like mountains, right? She is holding balloons that float up. She is flames going up. Tip Top is water and is shown to be clumsy and therefore is shown falling. His vehicle is crashing down. It's disintegrating. And another weird duality between them is shown in the plot itself, because Pipsy is a believer. She has faith in the whole Taj incident because she has direct knowledge of the fact that Taj is back. Taj has woken up. She has heard it. And she is so excited by this news that she speaks really fast. She speaks so fast that the other characters have a hard time understanding her. Her speech is going at a frequency that is higher, a higher frequency, and her voice, her pitch, is also high-pitched. It is described in those terms. So everything about her seems to be high-pitched. It tends towards highness. Tip Top is shown to stutter, which I think might imply kind of like is shown to stutter and to be clumsy. I think these traits are meant to suggest that he isn't as fast and agile, but is sort of slower. He takes longer to say a whole sentence, and he can't do things very quickly and nimbly. So it's as if somehow there is a way in which Pipsy is emerging as a character that represents speed, high speed, whereas Tip Top seems to represent slowness. So is fire associated to high speed, and then water, ice, is colder? So, you know, in a sense, it makes sense even in physical terms that fire is, the molecules in fire move faster, according, from our measurements, in comparison to those of ice, for for example, right? So there is this sort of weird duality of speed, which again revolves around this issue of time. And so what has happened here in the plot is that Pipsy and her family have been kicked out of the mountain. The mountain was the source of fire, I think. It's where the volcanoes are. It's where the dinosaurs are. It's where height is. All these things that are associated to fire, to high speed. So it's as if Pipsy has been kicked out of there and replaced with Whizpig. Whizpig, who rides the phallic missile, who commands light or fire as well, right? Whizpig commands the fire of lightning and associates with it. It's almost as if what is happening here, there is something about the way in which masculinity is associated to fire, right? The way in which it sort of claims it for itself somehow, right? The superego grabs Whizpig, takes control of the heights, and sends everything back down to the depths. But the heights is where Pipsy lived. So a reclaiming of fire needs to be taken by Pipsy. She needs to reclaim her home in fire, right? Which is to say, again, is to say that the way that the superego stifles individuals and say, no, you shouldn't be loud, you should be quiet, or you shouldn't be quiet, you should be strong and loud, right? This kind of rigid compartmentalization is what is being tackled here. It's almost as if what the superegoic force of Whizpig is saying is, you, Pipsy, shouldn't belong in the mountain. You should belong over here. And you should go over there. And everything is in its right, proper place within the structure. And so the final celebration is funny because it's this, in a sense, it's this orgiastic loss of control, right? Whizpig is all about domination, control. And the final celebration is a Dionysian, like orgiastic party in some way, to reclaim the freedom to break the boundaries of the superego in some way, to have fun, to express oneself spontaneously. That's what a party, I think, represents in these games. Fun. And that's why Future Funland is like this moment of the realization of the role of spontaneous self-expression as being the desire that is being stifled by the impositions of the superegoic structure, authority. And I think that is why Pipsy is riding some dinosaurs and is happy about it, because the dinosaurs represent fire, the mountain. It's as if Pipsy has reclaimed the mode of expression, the fire, that the structure was preventing her from expressing.